Welcome to Conscious Insights, Strategies for Leadership Evolution. Engage in roundtable discussions that spark deep dialogue with executives and thought leaders to advance conscious leadership and explore innovative practices. Join us and gain insights that will elevate your leadership journey. Hi there, and welcome to another fun episode of Conscious Insights. Today we have a really fun group of people that I'll be talking to. And our topic today is Innovative Impact, How Colorado Champions Conscious Entrepreneurship. And we have with us today a visionary entrepreneur, well, really two visionary entrepreneurs, but two playing very, very different roles. So let me first introduce them by way of bio, and then we'll get to talk to you all by way of your brilliance, your essence, and what you're doing here in Colorado. All right. So first we have Mick Freeman. And Mick is a mission-driven, tech-forward visionary, a Harvard MBA with 25 plus years of professional experience. We expect a lot from you now, Mick, in public, private, and nonprofit management. He's an energetic leader and general manager with uncommon multi-sector breadth and depth. He's got cross-industry, cross-functional, and multi-stage executive management experience. And he's very passionate about the current affairs, civic engagement, social enterprises, leadership development, education, and unlocking societal capacity for the greater good through business. Love that. Complex and fun. Mick is accomplished at financing and fundraising, sponsorships, partnerships, and launching and scaling and operating nonprofit and for-profit social enterprises. A really unique blend of skills. And he's currently serves as the CEO and executive director of Bridge Entrepreneurs Network Colorado, also referred to as BEN Colorado. He supports the growth and impact entrepreneurs to drive revenues, create jobs, and make a personal and professional impact. And in between all of that, he's also the father of 3 children, a beloved dog, and 2 goldfish, and lives in the lovely town of Golden, Colorado. And next, we have Kelly Mazanti. She's the founder of the women outdoor-owned apparel brand called Buttnski. Love that. Based in Summit County, Colorado, near Breckenridge. And she's a champion for women in the outdoor industry. She also co-founded a movement called Rural is Rad, which supports rural brands and founders in the outdoor industry. She officially launched Buttnski in 2023 and is on a mission to help people have more fun doing what they love outside without sacrificing style for performance. The brand was inspired by a pair of her mom's fleece shorts from the 80s that have kept her butt warm on cold chairlifts for 3 decades. I need some of those, for sure. So Kelly and Buttnski are a 2-time capstone partner with the CU Boulder Masters of the Environment program to develop the sustainability roadmap and circularity plan. She's an alumni at the CU Boulder Lead School of Business and currently serves on the Outdoor Recreation Advisory Board for the state of Colorado, alongside leading brands and professionals. Prior to this, Kelly spent a decade working for global brands, including Starbucks, Nordstrom, Red Bull, and Staples. And Kelly draws her inspiration from nature. Whether on the trails or the slopes, skiing, biking, hiking, or backpacking, her heart lies between the Rocky Mountains of Colorado and along the shores of the Pacific Northwest, where her love for adventure and the outdoors were born. So, as you can see, these are 2 really incredible human beings that we have here today. And so, there's so much background that both of you bring. You bring your values, you bring your ideas, you bring your mission. And I'm like, where do we start? What I really want to know is what drives you today to do what you're doing now? I know I just read your bio, but it's so different. Just hearing a little bit about your organizations and really what you're doing, and more about your products too, Kelly.
Am I starting?
You're starting.
Oh gosh. Well, I feel like I should probably start with how I met Mick, right?
That'd be great.
So I think with this whole conversation around the rich ecosystem that Colorado offers to entrepreneurship and particularly the outdoor industry, I met Mick because of that very thing. I spent the last year and a half with the state of Colorado and a lot of partner organizations in rural Colorado doing a lot of accelerator programs. And through that, I gained an amazing network of mentors, advisors, and even investors. So Mick was one of the people that responded to a video submission of mine from one of the accelerator programs that I did with Startup Colorado. And his response was by far the most appealing, as far as I could hear his enthusiasm through the response to my 90-second video. So he was actually one of the first people I reached out to. And at the time, this was prior to his appointment as, please correct me if I'm wrong, as the executive director of Ben. Formerly, you were just an advisor in the network, and then among all the other things that you do. But immediately when we connected, we had this really rich conversation, and it went way past the hour that we had allotted. And you pretty much became one of my favorite mentors. And I'm so lucky to have you. So through that, I've had a lot of amazing introductions to other people. Every time I reach out to Mick, he has solutions for me. And even if he doesn't know the answer, he immediately thinks of 10 people he could connect me to and resources that I could look into. So that's sort of an overview of how rich this ecosystem is. Um, and I guess I'll stop there because I didn't answer your question, but I think that was sort of the lead into what this network provides to entrepreneurs like myself.
Well, keep asking more questions. So, well, because I have some from that. But first, Mick, tell us a little bit about Bend, Colorado, and then I'll go back and I want to hear a little bit, help people understand what we mean when we say rural Colorado. But what does Bend,
Sure.
Colorado do?
So again, Ben is short for Bridge Entrepreneurs Network. We are a 10-year-old nonprofit that connects been there, done that, gray hair, scale up entrepreneurs with younger growth stage entrepreneurs to help them navigate challenge and change. Most of these companies have started to hit product market fit. They're getting repeatable revenues. And the founder and CEO is starting to outgrow his or her skill set, the team. Do they have the right go-to-market strategy? When do I take financing? What kind of financing? What do I use it for? And so we will curate connections between people like Kelly and our advisor network, which is over 200 strong, active today, 500 lifetime, who know exactly how to help with those growth challenges, that vertical, that stage. And all we ask, because this is free, is that the entrepreneur be coachable, vulnerable, live in a no BS zone, because we are no skin in the game here. We're just here to help you and give back. So tell us what's going on. And that free nature creates rapid trust and rapport because we're just here to help them not fail, which is what happens to most startups.
And so you mentioned something, Kelly, that you met Mick, not Ben. You met Mick via Ben.
It happens all the time. It happens
through Startup Colorado and through rural. And so for not everyone that's listening understands what we say when we mean rural Colorado. What does that mean? What's Startup Colorado? And how did that help you as an entrepreneur? I want to hear your story of getting there.
Absolutely. So I live, like you mentioned, in Summit County, Colorado, near Breckenridge, and we are considered rural. There are two designations for what rural means in different states. One is based on economic opportunity zones, or EOZs, and that designation is slightly different. Other designations, like Summit County, are not rural economic opportunity zones, but they are rural by nature of their distance and proximity to urban resources and other factors. So that is why I'm rural, because I'm about an hour and a half off of what we call the Front Range of Colorado, which is, the Denver metro area. And so there's organizations all throughout the state that are working together to serve entrepreneurs and the growth of this economy in our state. And rural Colorado has a really strong network of people and allies on the Denver metro Front Range area. So the Startup Colorado network primarily serves people in rural Colorado across all industries, not just outdoor. But they have these accelerator programs, such as the one that I participated in, which was called the Founder Co-opetition, and partner organizations like Ben and like Rocky's Venture Club. They have a network of advisors and mentors that agree to participate and give feedback to the entrepreneurs as they kind of shape up their business plans or work on their 90-second pitch for either fundraising or the type of resources they need help with next in their stage of growth. So that's how I got connected to Mick, because he was one of that network of advisors that agreed to review the submissions and then provide feedback to certain entrepreneurs. And so I find that a lot of people, I've lived in Denver, Seattle, Los Angeles, and back to Colorado. I didn't expect to find myself up in a rural place before retirement age. And I sort of ended up here by happenstance in 2019, thinking it was a stopover. And pretty quickly, I realized this is where I want to put my roots down. And I did that because I joined a shared workspace in 2019 and realized there were other people who were entrepreneurial like myself and who were running their businesses remotely. And then since that time, I've discovered there's other organizations that support what we're all doing, and they really do want to help.
Colorado is such an interesting state because on the east side of our state, we have farmland, then we have the big metro areas, and then we have our mountains, where all of our ski resorts are, and then we go a little further west and it gets more deserty and more, on everything except for the metro area pretty much is considered rural. And so, it's such a diverse, it's more diverse than people may think of just the makeup. And I'm really, well, Kelly, let's first talk a little bit about what your business is, and then we can talk about what was so interesting to Mick as an advisor.
Great. So Buttnski was inspired by a pair of fleece shorts that my mom has had from the 80s. And growing up in Washington State, I grew up skiing at Stevens Pass, which is now a Vail Resort, which is kind of mind blowing to me because it was just a tiny little resort that we went to. And we wore garbage bags most of the time because it was usually raining when we showed up. And so I had a ski instructor growing up named Miss Mary, and she's actually the woman, I believe, who sewed the original fleece shorts in the 80s. And my mom bought a pair from her. And when I moved up to Summit County in 2019, I was actually living with my parents for a short time. They had a place up here and it was sort of a stopover, but I got to see her wearing these things every morning before she would put her ski pants on. And I remember them from childhood, getting in the car and driving to Stevens Pass. And I just couldn't believe these still existed and they hadn't disintegrated in the wash, like baby blankets. You're eventually left with a corner.
Yeah.
So the shorts were still intact and they looked ridiculous, but they're also cool. And I said, why do you still have these? And she said, they're the only thing I found that keeps me warm on cold chairlifts while I ski. Otherwise, I sit on a cold chairlift and I immediately have the life sucked out of me and I'm uncomfortable and I want to go home. So immediately I thought, well, if that's the only thing you've found and you're a shopper, that probably there's not a lot of things that exist. So what if we just made some shorts and made them better? How hard could it be? It turns out it's a lot more involved than that. But I guess I'm a little overconfident because I had already started a business in 2017. It was a brand design and strategy business. So I knew I could have a business, no problem. I'm a little bit risky that way. And I'm not afraid of challenges. And then my brother has been in the outdoor industry his entire career. So I knew that if I wanted to do something, I would just have to ask him and he could get me to somebody who could do something and tell me what to do next. And that's what I did. So in 2020, I started the business and then I knew I could do the branding. So we did the branding and design. And then I pretty much shelved it for about a year and a half because I actually talked to a pattern maker in Boulder and she told me that I needed to come to her with the idea and the material. And I didn't know how to do that. So I just went back to my brand design business for a while. And then in about 2022 fall, I revived the idea, figured out that there's already materials like Polar Tech that I could probably get samples of and then come to her with some sample material and say, hey, could you make a pattern? Yeah. So that sort of started the ball rolling again. And then since then, I haven't stopped.
Okay.
So can I piggyback on that? So
yes.
Where I came in, so I probably reviewed in the neighborhood of 90 to 100 pitch videos from the Startup Colorado group. And, this is, you're asked to give very quick, succinct feedback. And so you're forced to really give a thumbs up or thumbs down pretty fast. And what I remembered from Kelly, and this is coming up on a year and a half ago, maybe. What I remembered from all those videos was, one, completely genuine, as you can see here. There's not a bit of guile or ego. It's all about how can I do this, and I need the help, and that was important. I love the fact she was talking about sustainable manufacturing and sourcing of what she makes. And I love the fact that she was thinking about community, which sounds like an overused word, but in reality, so many businesses have spawned outside the Front Range since the pandemic. And you really don't have these local hubs of entrepreneur support. And you certainly don't have local manufacturing and brands that are starting to spawn up all over the state. And I'm like, Kelly's going to figure that out. And I want to help her do that. She cares about the world. She cares about her product. She's not leaving this space because she's a genuine outdoors person. But she's also pretty young in grade for this big, huge industry with lots of competition she's taking on. I want to help if I can. And as she said, I was a volunteer advisor with Ben for 6 or 7 years before I jumped into the CEO ED seat a year ago. So I just got great joy out of watching people like Kelly thrive, and I want to see her succeed.
I love listening to that because not once in what you really saw in her did we talk about the specific product. We talked about
business model.
We talked
He's
about
not wearing the cheetah print shorts, to my knowledge.
And this is
I don't think they'd fit.
Yeah, and this is what is so interesting about this, right? Is that it's about, yes, the product, and the product is important and the business model is important, but what really drew you to her was her character, was the sustainability, and was her look on the bigger picture, something bigger than herself, which in some respects is what we call the triple bottom line when we're looking at people, profit, and planet. And so I assume there was probably something, decent about the product and the business plan, but it's the fact that you said it was the other things that drew you first.
Yeah, I mean, she checked the boxes, right? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah.
There's the meat and the sizzle, right? She has the meat in terms of the business. There was revenues, there was manufacturing, there was, work in progress, there was future orders that needed working capital. Clearly, she was getting some level of product market fit. So yeah, that's just kind of like the entry level piece, but it's the sizzle that says, I can help coach this person to another level that can have a huge economic development impact. Not to mention, she's successful here and now. What does she do next that's even bigger? How does she make the world a bigger place? Because she's got that ambition and that energy. So I just want to uncork that and not let her tumble, because this is the hardest part, the hardest time. She's going to get through it. It's hard sometimes. It sucks. It's challenging. I have no doubt that she's going to do this and then go do something else bigger. And I'll be like, I was a little teeny piece of the fabric of Kelly's impact in the world.
Awesome. Kelly, tell us a little bit more about the heart of what drives you. I mean, when I read your bio, it's a tie to nature. I grew up in the mountains of Colorado, so I grew up in the Vail Valley, and it's in my soul. There's there's certain things that drive us, and then we end up doing things in the outside world. How does who you are as a human, how does it relate to what you're doing in business?
Wow, this is a loaded one. I have spent years kind of unpacking this, and a lot of it had to do with when I moved back here in 2019. It was a time of having strayed from the outdoor world that I grew up in for about a decade. And like I mentioned, I lived in LA, Seattle, Denver. I was kind of living in all these places where I was thinking I would thrive in my corporate career and move for a job and more money and just climb the corporate ladder. But I was always chasing something that I couldn't quite grasp. And I thought maybe if I just keep making more money, I'll be happy, because I certainly wasn't happy with what I was doing and the subject matter. I was really good at what I did, and I kept climbing and climbing, but I just couldn't figure out how to fill the void. And so when I ended up here in 2019 in Summit County, which is a place I spent in college coming up here and skiing and partying, really, I knew that my experience of this place was either like people who just partied and lived kind of a bum ski life, or people who were retired and they had already lived their life and they were just here for fun. So I didn't think there was an in between, but I quickly realized I was getting invited on backpacking trips and biking and all this stuff. And at the time, I had my other brand business and I was flying back to LA every 2 weeks. So I was sort of missing out on all of these invitations. But then once I started participating, I realized this is the group of people in the community that I had been missing for that whole decade. And I couldn't find because I would just, I don't know, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time doing the wrong thing. And I wasn't living in my passion. And what I learned very quickly being up here is if you start doing what you're passionate about, the rest just kind of follows. And that's super important. And then since living here, I've realized this is my home. This is my community. And there's a lot of challenges living in rural places, as you know, growing up in the Vail Valley, but particularly around the seasonality of the ski industry and the hospitality industry. So one of the things I'm really passionate about from a bigger picture economic development perspective is I want to contribute to driving economic development in Summit County, where I've decided to build my life and my home. And I want to help contribute to possibly year-round jobs, or just, being someone who recognizes and starts to drive change for what is possible, that it doesn't all have to be around, one industry or one kind of lifestyle. So that's something that I think is still, there's a lot of resistance around that because there's so much money in what's happening. But the reality is climate's changing and the economy's changing, and the generation that's coming after us wants different things and they want a different lifestyle. So if we don't start to drive that change, it's going to be a really sad situation, I think, for a lot of people. And this isn't going to be the paradise that people come here for.
Yeah. And so we see so much more about the product itself and the business itself and the impact that you're trying to make. What's Mick, what's Colorado? I mean, obviously Colorado is beautiful and Colorado has a lot to offer from the outdoor, but there's an intentional strategy. Was it always intentional in Colorado to support entrepreneurs and to support this, or has it come together organically?
I can't speak forever, but I can speak for the last 10 plus years that it's been very intentional. So Startup Colorado, again, how we met, Ben and I met Kelly, was founded by half the same co-founders. So we're kind of like first cousins separated at birth. And the idea was we need a statewide ecosystem, but we got to break it up based on expertise and geography. Startup Colorado will take early, startup to product fit stage companies, get them up to a certain revenue level, and then tap some of Ben's advisors to help get them to the next level. So it was really a continuum idea. And I think, back to your fundamental question, we are such a collaborative state. Sometimes people ask me, like, what is it about Colorado that we keep helping each other, including our competitors? And I said, well, having lived in a lot of places like Chicago and Atlanta and how many road shows and all the New Yorks and Bay Areas and LAs of the world, we look at the world as abundant and not scarce. And I think that's the difference. The pie is this big to a lot of ecosystems. And if you get into it, you're trying to steal my pie. And we just come at it as Coloradans saying, it's so much bigger. How can I help? Because your success should equate to our success. Mm-hmm. So I think together we have an aura that's way beyond the quantitative output. I could give you the stats and say, Ben, in 10 years, has generated over 10 billion of revenue and billion plus of exits and 24,000 unique jobs. And you nod and say, isn't that interesting? Well, that helps us make the case and proves that we're doing something right. But I think it's that qualitative aura of support that any entrepreneur, like Kelly was saying, can reach out and say, hey, I have a question. I have a need. It may not be a fit for us, but goodness, we probably know where to send them. And that is just unique. And I'd like to figure out how to package that statewide and then figure out long-term how to export it to other places, because I think we got something unique.
Yeah.
Can I add to that really quick?
Absolutely.
So you just mentioned the immediate need. I had an immediate need last year at some point where I had products stuck in customs from Vancouver, Canada, where we were manufacturing our down pants. And what happened is I switched from my US manufacturer, who sort of ghosted me. So I had to really quickly make a pivot. So I hadn't imported anything from Canada. So I just assumed it would be the same process because I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. And my other manufacturer is in Los Angeles. So I'm not dealing with customs. So I was in a big pinch because I had inventory to deliver to retailers and also customers who were waiting on pre-orders. And all of a sudden, nobody could tell me where my stuff was. It was just in limbo and I had no idea what to do. So I called up Tim Martinez from he's in Chaffee County now with economic development, but he also works with Startup Colorado. And I knew him because of all these accelerators I've participated in. And he immediately said, I think you need to talk to the World Trade Center. So he gave me a contact there. Turns out in 2019, I had been on a trade mission with this woman, Karen, who she's like the ED for the World Trade Center, I think. And so I knew her, but very quickly I got to a person at the World Trade Center who called me within 30 minutes and said, oh, it sounds like you need a customs broker. And I said, okay, I don't know what that is. But he gave me the number for somebody who's also a female owned operation out of the Front Range in Denver. She answered her phone right away. So this all happened within 45 minutes. And she said, all right, here's what's going on. Here's what I think is what you need. And in the meantime, let's get started with you getting onboarded with me so that I can help you for all your future orders so this doesn't happen. Long story short, I got really overwhelmed because there was a lot of paperwork I had to fill out to get her onboarded, but it was just because it was something I had never done before. And that's just what you have to do. But she still figured out how to get my stuff outside of that customs jail and she located it and I had my product. But it would have sat there for 3 more months because I had no idea what was going on. But one phone call and having been involved in this network of organizations that are here to help me got me a solution that I could never have come to on my own.
And I almost think about it, as we've got this relationship of networks, but it's also when people talk about, the mycelium underneath the ground that really is connecting all of our trees. It's like the Colorado network is like a mycelium network of making sure things stay together, people get connected. And I also related to the work that I do in the world, people will ask well, why would we do people actually don't ask why. Sometimes they don't understand what conscious leadership or human touch strategy is. And what I hear you both saying is one, being more conscious, seeing the human side of things is the right thing to do. And it actually produces results. It produces bottom line results and it produces them better.
And the common thread.
Absolutely.
Oh, Mick, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, good.
Well, the common thread is whether we're in the outdoor industry or not, I just happen to be for my business. Pretty much all of us in Colorado are here for one reason or another related to our love of this place. That has to do with I love to hike. I love to ski. I used to live in Breckenridge. So the World Trade Center guy who ended up getting me the customs broker contact right away said, oh my God. I mean, this is a guy who works for in a government organization. Oh my God, you live in Breckenridge. That's so cool. I used to live in Breckenridge 10, So right away, there's these connections with strangers. And you don't get that in many other places. It's very unique. You always find this common thread that gives you a human connection right off the bat. And that allows you to do business together easier because there's this level of trust instantly.
Absolutely.
That's exactly the point. If I can just quickly add to that, that's exactly what I was going to say, that people do business with people. People don't do business with contracts and business models and organizations and boards and sales, systems. They do business with people at the entrepreneur level. And I think that's the difference. We can choose to work together because we see the authenticity, the ambition, the desire to do something good. And we might say, hey, the business model needs some work. There might be some issues with Vancouver, but this is the right jockey, to bring that horse, around the racetrack. And so it's way more important at the person level because there's no business without that.
Now, I hear a lot. I agree with you. And then I hear a lot about how difficult it is. One, just for founders, but really specifically for women looking for capital in business. Tell me, is that a across the board thing, or is it different in Colorado? What's your sense when I bring that up?
That is Yes and no.
It's yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So one example would be that the first thing I ever went to where I pitched, I cried after, not in front of them, but I was so overwhelmed afterwards. And part of it was that I didn't feel fully supported because the people in the room didn't represent me. And it, anyway, they're trying to make change, but it's not seeming to happen. And then on the flip side of that, there's people like Mick and all the other males I've interacted with who have most of my advisors and mentors are men who fully support women and are champions for women. And I'm I'm not a woman who is like a victim of women are, not supported, because they are by certain people.
Mhm.
And we all have to work together. It's not just women supporting women, it's everybody supporting everybody. But since then, I do have a angel investor who is a woman. I also have one that's a man. And I met with another woman today who's interested because she partners with her husband on investments. So I'm starting to find this balance. But yeah, I still think there's a lot of work to be done. One of the challenges that I see in the industry is that I'm a heterosexual white woman. There's a lot of emphasis right now on BIPOC and gender neutrality, which I fully support. I just want to make that absolutely clear. I think that there's a little bit of we skipped over women in general, and now we're just going to minority women or
Mm.
someone who identifies as a woman who's also got to be a minority. And that is, it's kind of like I've heard that in Hollywood that kind of happened at one point where, oh, like if you're a white woman, we have too many of you. We need like a
Yeah.
Persian woman or an Asian woman who fits this mold. But I think we need to remember that it's not that long ago that women couldn't vote. We're not done dealing with like equality here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can't just skip over certain groups of women to help the more minority group.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to give a stat, I pulled one up because I've got its stuff here. In the U.S., only 13% of funding goes to startups that have a woman on the founding team, not even as the founder,
Mm.
on the founding team. And the 30-year all females number, you want to guess what that is? All females percent of VC funding. Take a guess.
0.5 or 1.
Just 2.4%. I've heard regularly 2%, but yeah, I'll go with the stat that I'm seeing. I do think it's harder. And one of the things, we're doing at Ben is, as Kelly knows, is we have a program called Denver Scale Up Network where we intentionally look for companies in the 250 to 500,000 up to maybe a couple million. And 70% of those are female led, 43% minority led. So, you can come at it as a white female and be in the female stat, or you can come in as minority and be in the minority stat. It's very important to us that we look at underserved populations. And I do think white female founder in the non-front range is absolutely a scarce animal.
And
Yeah.
non-tech. Then you throw in
Non-tech even.
non-tech, because tech gets the most funding and it's gone down. Obviously, people have reined in their money a little bit. But if you're non-tech, good luck.
So,
By the way, you're competing with 24,000 tech companies, right? In Colorado, 17,500 of them are in the Denver metro area. Not even just front range, in the Denver metro area. And we have actually 4 of the top 10 MSAs, metro areas in the country for tech density. And it's Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, and the Springs. So
yeah,
again, the scarce animal, like you're pushing a rope uphill to try to get attention, which is why we consider this an underserved population that deserves a voice and support.
absolutely. And so what is the strategy, do you think, for Colorado, for startups, for tech, for like where are we going? I mean, the world is quickly changing. It's super uncertain right now. So I know it's really hard to answer that question. And at the same time, the two of you are right in the middle of it and have hopes and dreams and see things that are happening. Like what's your sense of this?
I
I'll
take it first.
start. Yeah, for sure. But feel free to jump in, of course. So if I were a parent of 2 college kids, wait, I am. We were going to graduate soon. I don't think there's a better place for them to be than Colorado. Here's why. We're the second largest aerospace state. in the United States and growing fast. We now just got the Quantum Tech Hub, if you know the Elevate Quantum Project, which is really a kind of Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, but centered in Colorado. And it's intended to be the largest quantum hub in the United States. We beat out Chicago and other very research-centric, well-funded towns. And on top of that, we have this growing tech, base here, as I mentioned before, that still is the number one place for startups. And Ben is very heavy tech B2B SaaS advisors, but we also have aerospace, bioscience, healthcare, energy, manufacturing, CPG. And within CPG, there's a lot happening in natural foods, like our partnership with Naturally Colorado. So I would just say there is so much here that's cool in terms of an industry and industries that are growing. Right. So how do we work together? We can take you from very early, almost, day zero ideation with some of the early stage work that Startup Colorado does, all the way through early growth stage with Ben, all the way through a big exit. My very first advisory thing, I'll take no credit for it. The company exited 18 months later with something like 150 million exit. And I was like, oh, this works, what we're doing. Right. So, we have a big range of impact. And so I look at it and say, there's not a better place to be. You've got this friendly ecosystem. We want everybody to succeed. We just want to make sure that non-front range entrepreneurs have access to the bountiful blessings that we have here in terms of networking events, funders, and advisors. That's what this is about.
Awesome.
And
Kelly,
I'll
what do you
add
think?
to that from my own perspective. And the mentor network is key. Absolutely. I've built an informal board just around the experiences I've had with Startup Colorado and all of these accelerator programs, and then gap funding. So venture capital is traditionally the funding mechanism for those industries that Mick mentioned: biotech, tech, SaaS, aerospace. They can see the model and how it's going to be replicated, and it's one thing that you just replicate over and over, and so it's easy to see the 10x return in 5 years or sooner. So apparel and most of the outdoor industry product companies are a lot different than that. You can't get that kind of return as fast. It's just not possible. So what we've been talking a lot about in rural is different forms of gap funding. So I think, to answer your question about what is necessary for this to work, it's working with our partners. And in rural Colorado, it's the EDCs, which are the Economic Development Councils. So, for example, we have the Summit Economic Partnership led by Thayer in Summit County, and it's been getting revived. And it's a huge impact for people like me, because they're now trying to get these networks of angel groups developed so they can deploy their capital. So those are critical to people at my stage who are not in those industries like tech and those high growth, fast paced industries, who these angels are flexible. They have $5,000 up to $50,000 that they might provide for debt financing, which I didn't even know what that was about a year ago, but it's basically non-equity based support for someone like me. So, for example, I have an angel investor who agreed to put in a certain amount of money to help us buy our raw materials in advance of manufacturing. So he's someone who understands that we have a manufacturing cycle that happens before we can actually sell and make money off that product. So we can't start making payments in 30 days.
Right.
There's basically like VCs, and then there's all these traditional loan funds or SBA, which are great and serve a purpose when you're stacking your capital in the future. But at our stage, they put us further in the hole, because we would get this loan and in 30 days expect to make payments, but we don't have anything to sell yet. So this particular angel agreed that after 90 days of receiving my product, I would start making payments, and we'd pay it off in 6 months at 12% compound interest. And that works for me, but then I have to really get my butt in gear and make sure I have places I can sell it when I don't have a digital marketing budget. So I have to be out there selling. But this impact of angel investors in these hubs is critical, because they can actually pool their money and make bigger investments together. And then we can start to stack our capital with support from mentors and advisors and bank partners and eventually possibly going into VCs and things like that, if that's the right fit at that time.
Yeah. So,
And this ecosystem can carry you all the way through that journey.
right.
That's what this collaboration does.
And yeah, and that's, I mean, so we started talking at the beginning about some individual, how your individual purpose ties to what you're doing. Then we talked about the character and the relationship. So we were in the heart, we were an individual, and then we moved over to the ecosystem. We talked a lot of numbers. We talked a lot ahead. Like we're doing that as well, right? We're investing. We've got debt funding. We've got different kinds of investment, and we bring it all together. And so for both of you, what is that? For me, that's conscious leadership, and that's what leads to systemic change, and is combining and the bridge of the head and the heart. What does that mean to you? To me, Colorado is we have our issues, right? We need to talk. We need more women getting funding. But we're talking about it. But we need that, and but we've got a lot going on. What is conscious leadership in Colorado? What does that mean to you?
Can I start?
You start.
Okay. I think one of the things I've noticed that can get really overwhelming as someone in my position is you go to all these things, these accelerators, and you get all these mentors, and everyone just wants to help. And we've talked about this, Mick. Sometimes you get this overload of different opinions. People are like, oh, I see what you're doing. You should do this. You should do that. You should focus on this product only. And they just get all this feedback that you're like, oh my God, well, they told me to do this. What I'm trying to like get money from them. So I should probably do that. Or they might not think I'm good at what I do if I don't listen to their advice. So it all comes back to your original question about your values. So I think for me, having my personal values and knowing what the values for the company that I'm building are. So I always have a meter to come back to and say, does this match up with my values? And that's why Mick is such a perfect fit for me as a mentor, because he's not trying to dictate what my business does. He's letting me be the expert in my business, but he's helping me with all the skill sets that I need support in, versus someone who comes in and tries to tell you everything about what they think your business is. And I think Colorado in general is geared towards the way that Mick operates. And there's some exceptions to that, which is why it's so important to come back to your values so you can gauge everything that comes in against, well, what's my goal here? What is my vision? What am I trying to accomplish? And then you can take it or leave it. But you can't take it or leave it if you don't have anything to come back to as your guiding principles.
Right.
So I think the conscious leadership comes from the leader who's building the thing, knowing what they're trying to build and not wavering from that just because they get advice from someone who's an expert. But in general, like recognizing that everyone in this network is trying to help. And so sometimes they want to tell you something because they think it might be helpful, as opposed to just saying nothing. But I just think like this network is really here to help everyone thrive. Like the rising tide raises all ships phenomenon. It truly is the way that we operate here in Colorado.
And can I add to that?
Yes.
I would say, to me, conscious, leadership is using your own values to grow the business from day one. You can't create a culture later and say, this is what we're going to be. The founder is really the protagonist and the role model for that. My own personal values, and my teams would reinforce this over time, is really threefold. And that's because of all life experiences and work experiences, but it's collaboration. Nobody can do this on their own. It's accountability. We're accountable to ourselves, to our teams, to a higher purpose in life. Accountability is very important, and transparency. And transparency was the hardest and longest lesson learned, which is we all try to kind of fake where we are and how good things are going and put on a good front. And as an entrepreneur, you just got to take that mask off with your advisors, your friends, your colleagues, and be real, because that's the only way you're going to get stuff done. My team knows our bank account balance, our runway, what everybody's getting paid. There's just, you've got to get rid of the water cooler talks just so people can focus on trusting each other and working toward a common goal. So those are the three for me. And I think about, where my ultimate values came from was a combination of my parents and family and a service orientation, but a college leadership program where a guy named John Gardner, who was the founder of Common Cause, gave this amazing speech. And, what I really remembered from it was he said, the role of leadership is to make sure that people don't die with their music in them. Think about the power of that. People don't die with their music in them. And that has stuck with me since summer of 1987. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't die with my music in me, and I can't let other people die with their music in me. And the last thought, it's funny, just totally randomly, one of my investors from a couple businesses ago sends out a newsletter, and I stay in touch with this guy. And he's always introspective. And I think this is a better answer than I ever could have given. He was said at the end, I'm going to read this to you without saying it. At the end of 2024, I took time off to reflect. I wanted to answer a fundamental question. Do I respect the work I've done at my company today and what I must do or not do better so that when I look back at the end of it all, I'll be proud of my life's work? In this instance, success is the achievement of a firm's desired economic outcomes within the philosophical, moral, and ethical parameters established by the founder at the start. I could not agree more with what my friend David said there. You got to have it from the start. You can't create it. It can't be fake. People see right through it. And your legacy is going to be the things that Kelly passes on and on and on that she doesn't even know she's picked up over time from a dozen advisors like me. That's our legacy.
That is awesome. And you guys both so beautifully brought together. I have a saying that I like to say in my business is awakening conscious leadership for systemic change. I started in big consulting and doing a lot of change, and then got into deep conscious leadership work and combined them. And this is why we start with these personal aspects, but it's for something bigger than ourselves. But it starts with our individual values, and then we create we create systemic change. And I love that. And that is exactly why I asked you both to come and visit and talk today. And I thank you. We're a little bit on time, but I want one last question: is what would you just say,
Sure.
both of you, just a quick to somebody who's listening to this and who's like, I think my music's still inside of me. What would you say to them?
I'd say you're not alone. Reach out and ask for help, because there's people that want to give it, and it's not funny. It's expected.
So
I agree with that. And the saying about don't let perfect get in the way of starting or something. But in addition to that, anyone who's in my boat, but a few years before me, I say, join the Startup Colorado network, because that'll get you started and help you find your place and your people. I met Robin Hall, who owns Town Hall Outdoor Co., on a lean coffee that was women focused and outdoor industry focused. And now we started a movement together called Rural is Rad. And we have a women's group called Badass Colorado Outdoor Outerwear Ladies or something. And it's a bunch of us from all over the Front Range and rural that are in various stages of starting and building and growing outdoor clothing brands. So we could be competitors, but we're all helping each other. So we have this standing monthly call that sometimes doesn't happen, but we all are like, what events are you going to? What's going on with manufacturing? And that is that exists. So once you're in, just start, and somebody will help you get to the next right person.
And you'd be shocked that you don't have to pay for a lot of this. Like the old adage that if it's free, it must not be worth much. We actually have proven between Bend, Colorado and Startup Colorado that actually that's not true. We can give you immense value, and people are like, whoa, what's it cost? Your time, your commitment, your transparency, your vulnerability, your commitment not to quit. Yeah, but what's it going to cost me? No, that was it.
that is a cost. That's an investment. That's worth something. Yeah.
And it weeds people out.
Yeah.
It does.
Pretty quick.
Thank you both so much. What a gift. What an honor for me to be able to spend this time with you, and for other people to really get to hear about firsthand from you both about this ecosystem and about the amazing things that you're doing. So I'm going to put how to get a hold of, or both of your organizations in the show notes. And until then, I can't wait.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
For more information, visit insight-cc.com or email us at info@insight-cc.com. We look forward to hearing from you.